let's talk about Damsel, Netflix's latest fantasy epic starring Millie Bobby Brown. But is the Stranger Things star's newest production any good? Well, I'm going to share my honest review of it now. Please share yours below, and as per, there will be some spoilers in this video. Right, so this will probably tantalise the eyes of Stranger Things fans around the world, feeling the painstaking gap until the final season. And in principle, I think Damsel has a decent pull factor to lure you in. Big popular actress meets one of the most popular genres in recent times. Basically like one of Eleven's Dungeons and Dragons adventures. I bet that's going to be a fan theory to tie this in. And given the introductory hook of this film, that there are many stories about damsels in distress needing rescuing, and this is not one of those stories, you'd expect this to be a fresh and unique step forward in that subgenre. However, I think that when considering Damsel as a whole, its unique selling point doesn't actually wind up being unique at all. Brown plays Elodie, daughter to Ray Winston, and their kingdom is on its arse struggling to provide for its people. There's a strategic pre-arranged marriage on the cards to a wealthy prince that can help save her people. As setups go, this one is wrought with fairy tale cliches, and a lot of the acting in this film is awkward to say the least. The line delivery and Act 1's structure as a whole made this feel like one of those films within a film. You know, like when it's a film about an actor and we get to see a trailer for their latest film they've been working on, but it looks and sounds like the most generic thing ever. Damsel at many points feels like I'm watching something like that. Until we reach the shiny kingdom, that is, and we do actually get some rather nice moments of chemistry between Elodie and her betrothed Prince Henry. The scene of them walking together in the garden has some moments of sincerity and witty lines, but sadly this was the strongest writing in the film for me. But the kingdom still has somewhat interesting events taking place within it, such as Queen Isabel heel turning early on to let us know that the marriage is purely for necessity. There's no love or family there, only business. This was the start of sucking the glimmering fairy dust of the lovey-dovey princess-prince subplot away from the forefront and injecting sinister undertones. The undertones rise to the surface in a way where I actually thought, you know what, even though you set this up to me at the start of the film, it still felt like a rather effective swerve to reshift the film's weight balance. After a rather strange marriage process, Elodie and Henry are now tied and they share the blood of family. Right after this moment of delight, Elodie is tossed into a chasm. It's actually pretty brilliant stuff, this. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed how, even considering foreshadowing and expecting something bad was going to happen, this was still a really brutal way of pulling off the inevitable. The barbarism of this decision was such an opposite to the light and fluffy stock fantasy feelings felt earlier. And in hindsight, that makes me appreciate the tone of the film at the start even more. It's like in Barbie, where the film looks and feels exactly as you'd expect, almost too cliche for what you'd expect for Barbie, but then there's one moment where the axis of the film is smashed off center and the remainder of the film carries on from the ripple effect. Damsel went for similar here. It's not anywhere near the same level as Barbie's effectiveness, but it still made me sit up and go, alright, okay, now we're getting somewhere. However, sadly, I didn't feel like Damsel built on its shift all that well. That's because down in the chasm lives a dragon, and there's a long history of young women getting married, having their bloods mixed in order for the dragon to smell them out, and then getting launched into the abyss only to get picked off. In principle, this could have been really cool, but in execution, I feel like Elodie versus the dragon struggled to take advantage of its twist. The film could have been structured as Act 1 being exactly what the audience expects of a fantasy film starring Millie Bobby Brown, going exactly as planned, and then as soon as Elodie is thrown down, doing a massive U-turn into something totally against the grain and unexpected. Damsel just didn't, though. Firstly, it goes on for rather a long time. It's like a farcical romp around some caves for a significant chunk of the film's runtime, and that led to some foot tapping. What this is, right, this is Bilbo and Smaug in the mountain, but drawn out way farther than it needed to be and lacking interesting characters. Bilbo and Smaug's conversation is what kept things ticking. Plus, you'd had a massive amount of build-up prior to that encounter. Here we get an intro scene of a dragon attacking some knights, then a generic princess character, then they meet and are fighting each other. I didn't really care much about this conflict. I was more concerned about Elodie getting her revenge against the family, which was always going to be this film's out. Oh, and of course, I need to address this constant trope of monsters not being capable of being monsters. There's always a real monster, and that monster is typically a human character, because humans are the biggest monsters of all. And it turns out that the monster we are told is the monster is misunderstood or misinformed. Look, it's a trope that goes back generations to Frankenstein's monster, the Hunchback, the Wolfman. So because it's such an ingrained movie characteristic, you're probably asking, why am I complaining about it now? Well, it's because of what Damsel promised. It heavily implies to its audience that this film isn't going to be what you expect. It's going to be a new direction. It's going to do something you've not seen before. I mean, Christ, the slogan is, "This is not a fairy tale." Yes, it is. It's exactly what it is. A dark fairy tale, but most fairy tales are dark. I feel like I've seen everything in this film before, even the stuff post-twist. It sings its own praises that it's going to be unconventional, but then possesses a plethora of conventions, from strong female lead in a fantasy film, to betrayal within a marriage, to the monster being conflicted and turning good in the end, to an evil kingdom pretending to be good, to death scenes where the last words are "forgive me." Ugh, man, that was rough. To sailing off into the sunset with a dragon in the sky, straight out with Daenerys sailing towards Westeros. Even Elodie's kingdom looks exactly like Winterfell, and the main kingdom is just King's Landing, even down to the gardens. Damsel put a hat on its head of a promise to the audience that it's not going to be what you think it is. Sadly, despite some cool moments and patches of having my attention, the bulk of Damsel just felt repetitive of what we know the fantasy genre for. Just going into it with not much context, it's not a bad film. It's decent, but a bit flabby and exhausted. But then when you do have the context of what the film thinks it is, then you can spot the egg on its face. Many oddly acted scenes, hit and miss CGI, mostly miss, big structural and pacing issues, and thinking tad too highly of itself. Damsel is a film that you may be able to get through, but whether it'll stick with you and make you want to experience it again is a different question. Did you watch it and absolutely love it and want to see it more times? Let me know that. Did you see it, not make it through because you hated it? Let me know that as well. Everything I've mentioned in this video is just my honest review. Share yours below. I'm Connor Waits, thanks for watching. A cheeky sub to the channel would be much appreciated if you like this one, and I'll see you around for more. Cheers out.